here you are, a product of you lived in the area of the sexual revolution, and
Yes.
and we saw the fruit of that. Where
Mhm.
do you think we are now?
Hey friends, welcome to the Victor Marx podcast with Victor Marx, founder of All Things Possible Ministries. Welcome to the show where we bring you real conversations faced with life's hard truths, stories of redemption, and the latest from the front lines. Whether you're on the road, getting your day started, or finally settling in, we've got an exciting new episode planned for you. So let's dive into today's show.
Hey everybody, Victor Marx here. Welcome to another edition of the show. And today I have an amazing guest, Priscilla Hurley. Listen, I have to say the way that we were introduced and the timing of you coming on the program would be God, because so much stuff has happened. And first, I just want to thank you for taking the time to come on and share.
Hey, it's my privilege to be here. Thank you for making this happen finally. You know, it's been, but yeah, God's perfect timing
Well,
is
how long has the process been? Because I remember meeting your son in
right.
Anchorage and in the military,
Yes.
and I think you were under the
I
weather at
was
that time.
sick. I
Yeah,
was sick. I think I had COVID actually.
uh, yeah,
That was, well, I
excuse me.
accessed that video again that you um, made for me when you were here.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you remember that,
I
but
had forgot, but now I remember.
it was April of 2022. Yeah.
Wow. Well,
So, yeah,
I'm
but
excited. Hey, folks, today we're going to be sharing about the effects and trauma of abortion,
mhm.
and how Priscilla was set free and what she went through. And I think she's going to be able to encourage some of you listening. Some of you right now are going to be like, well, I haven't had an abortion, I'm not interested. Click. But I'd say don't turn, because chances are very good that you actually know somebody who has had an abortion. Very common, both out of the church and in the church. And this is important. It's an important
Mhm.
women
Yeah.
and men's issue. So
Yes.
um,
Yes.
here's my first question: is like, what abortion trauma? What does it specifically do to women? Like, how is it manifested? That like afterwards.
Well, I think when you think about God as our creator,
Mm.
he creates life. You know, Psalm 139 is full of that truth. Um, and it started for me, I think, just to run you through the real
Yeah.
brief uh, trifecta.
Yep.
I call it the trifecta of abortion. My mom was widowed with four kids.
Mm.
And so my dad, she was pregnant with me, and he was an experimental test pilot.
Wow.
So he crashed outside of Long Beach in one of the planes and these guys talk about risk, as a
Mm.
military guy. I mean, his job was to make sure the nuts and bolts stayed in. And the fuselage, it's hard to say this early in the morning, but it fell off, and both pilots were crashed. And
Mm.
so, my mom loved him so much. He was like her
Oh.
life, and the damage that did to her heart and her soul. She got scared trying to provide for five children, and
Yeah.
so she went to Mexico and had a surgical abortion.
Mm.
And I found out when I was 19, but I didn't really talk to her until after I came to Christ
Wow.
because I had questions,
Mm.
because I understood the value of life, but she apparently there might have been a twin, so she had
Oh.
that loss plus her husband. And then when you think about trauma, it with abortion survivors, because there's a whole network of people that have
Right.
survived
Which
various
folks
kinds of abortion.
listening, that's what Priscilla was and is, an abortion
I am.
survivor.
Yes, it was a failed abortion,
Mm.
but the trauma of that, having that evil intruder come into the womb.
Yeah.
I mean, you can probably identify with this a little bit, even though you're small and you're helpless and you're voiceless, you are impacted by that
Oh man.
because it's an evil. It's an evil,
Yeah. It's
to take the
attempted
life of.
murder, and
Yes,
you are a victim.
yes.
Yeah.
And so, my mom never dealt with the trauma, Victor, and I think that's one thing that you've done so well in your
Mm.
ministry is not only pull people out and rescue them from horrible situations, but work with them to be healed of the things like you've had to go through, like I've had to go through. You to a much, I mean, your story, I can't talk about it without getting emotional, but
Mm.
my mom never dealt with it.
Mm.
She never really was able to love me the way I needed to because she withdrew her love. And and it affected my older siblings too, but not to the extent that because I wasn't supposed to be here. So and I kind of felt that growing up. But
And
when
uh,
uh,
well, I want
go
to
ahead.
say for the viewers listening or watching right now, there are many that know that sentiment. There are
Yeah.
many that understand that pain,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
it's a form of rejection. Uh, you
Yes.
know, I
Yes.
tell people, certainly my mother's getting pregnant. I was the aftermath of that. They weren't even married, and they were divorced, and it,
Hmm.
it, it and a child feels that. There's
Yes.
there,
Absolutely.
there's there's no way a kid doesn't. So you grow up with this sense of rejection, and then you need
Hmm.
affirmation, and you want to know, am I okay? Tell me I'm okay.
Somebody validate my existence.
Yes, yes. And then oftentimes with women and
Yep.
girls,
Yes.
you seek the wrong validation, and there
Yeah.
are predators and uncaring people that will take a point of that like that, right?
Yes, and when I think about this may sound really crazy, but when I went to college, I was pretty protected. My mom remarried, really a wonderful man, really took
Oh,
care of us.
so good to hear that.
Um, but we didn't deal with the emotional rejection and all those things. But when I went to college, it was the sexual revolution happening, and
What year was
you
that?
know, well, I think let's see, when did I actually go? 68.
So it was in late 60s.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was when all that stuff was happening on colleges uh and and when you mentioned about getting validation through sex in my case,
Right.
promiscuous sex and um getting pregnant at 19,
Mm,
being scared, calling my mom and they just took over to have me get an abortion
I'm
at
sure.
19. And then 4 months after that, I went through that, just complied with their wishes, I mean, and I think trauma is, in my case, there's a lot of responses to trauma.
Right.
And in my case, I think I felt invisible. I felt, I didn't have a voice, I numbed down,
Yeah.
emotionally. And so I just kind of went along to get along and didn't have a voice. And so after that, 4 months later, we were walking, my mom and she turned to me and said, "By the way, I tried to have you aborted." So
Oh,
that
my
was when she
goodness.
first told me, and I was like,
Whoa.
the first thing I thought of,
Wow.
um, now I understand why I've never felt wanted, and that was like, it didn't change my behaviors. It didn't change that. There was no more, that's a thing, no more discussion after that. She dropped that and then quiet.
But like you
No more
said,
conversation.
but like you said, it gives you understanding, right?
Hmm.
I
Hmm. Yeah.
remember calling my
Yeah.
mother when I couldn't, when all of a sudden I emotionally detached from my fiance, who is now my bride. We had sent out the wedding invitations, and then all of a sudden I had nothing. And Eileen was like, "Are you okay? You getting cold feet?" I said, "No, I think it's worse than that. I don't feel anything. Like I feel
Yeah.
zero. I don't feel
Yeah.
happy, sad,
Yeah.
and I was excited all the way up, and all of a sudden, boom."
I
And
know.
I remember calling my mother because I had to talk to a psychiatrist, and they're like, "We think you have mom issues." And I'm like, Of course, I'm like, oh, shut up. That's an excuse. I don't have mom issues. And then I called my mom and said, what the hell did you do to me? Like, I have the dream girl and everything, and I'm pulling the pin on a relationship I could never even have. And you smile because you know what that means to pull that pin on that grenade. We either swallow it or throw it. And I never forget, my mother said this. She goes, Victor, okay, there were times when you would be crying in the crib as a newborn and a child, and I just couldn't pick you up because you reminded me of your father. I'm like, what? I'm a kid. So
I know.
children remember, they know that hurt, and then it does affect them. So people, listen, if you're starting to go, oh, I know something about that. First, me and Priscilla would say it's not your fault. Never was.
Yes. Yeah.
And the choices you made, you are responsible for. But when you're in a victim mentality, it's your thinking is so dysfunctional. You think it's right, but it's not.
Absolutely.
God can redeem any and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yes, he does.
But forgiveness is important on this journey as healing. What you say?
Well, I did. Yeah, I've had to forgive. I mean, I did forgive my mom, and I understood how desperate she was. That the sad thing is that she never really talked about it. You know, when I became a mom, I had another abortion, and then I worked in the abortion industry. So I was under this captivity, really, of abortion. The enemy just caged me, right? So
were you like the epitome of what we would call a modern day left-leaning liberal type gal? Was that you?
It wasn't really like that for me. I just think because I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I wasn't political about it.
Okay.
I was just captive I went into the industry, the clinic, because I felt like I wanted to help women deal with the actual process, of having an abortion.
It was good motives.
It was well intended, but I guess. But God saved me in the womb. Right? He saved you in the locker.
Yeah.
He saves us for a purpose, and I didn't know him. I didn't know who he was, but after I almost died in a car accident when I was still working at the clinic, I saw an angel outside the window, and he was telling me, "You're going to be all right," because I was reaching out in desperation. I was so fearful, and I wondered if I was fearful of dying, in that state. And I saw an angel. He said, "I was going to be all right." So I passed out and woke up in the hospital. I don't know how many.
Was there an image of what he looked like?
Yeah.
What was it?
Kind of looked like you, Victor. No, it was just a man, a man. And he had this really concerned look on his face, but yet calm.
I love that. Wow.
I mean, I wanted to find him after because I wanted to thank him, but he wasn't. He was here and gone, right? So, but God saved me again, and then I started questioning. What's my purpose? What's truth? I'm living with this man. I just had another abortion, and I'm working in this industry. And then God took me out of San Francisco and put me in rural Alaska.
Wow.
And I had Christian friends for the first time. I had beauty around. I don't know if you've ever been to Alaska, but it's beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
And I think God speaks to us through his creation.
I do too.
I got pregnant again, though. And this time I said no to abortion. I had my son. And this is another important point. When you move, I didn't know Christ yet. But when you move towards life, God is going to be there for you, I think. I believe that because that's who he is. Gives me chills talking about it. That's who he is. So 4 months after my precious baby was born, I got on my knees, man, and I just said, "Forgive me, God. come into my life, and people had been kind of discreetly witnessing to me,
Yeah.
and so I came to Christ and
Did
ended
you
up
feel
marrying
did you feel forgiven?
I did. I
Yeah.
did, and I mean, it was a slow process for me because I was really in the darkness, I
Right.
mean, it takes time. I married the dad of my son, and we had a short marriage because, we
But
weren't equally yoked,
but you
so to
did the right
speak.
thing. You
Yeah.
married.
And I had two other daughters, and Eric, who you met,
Yeah.
is my son-in-law, married to my beautiful daughter. And
Oh,
so he's blessed me so much. But I realized I have to tell you that the other thing I just wanted to share with you briefly
yeah.
is that God took me from Alaska to Southern California to teach abstinence in public schools for
Wow.
9 years in Southern California.
What
And
curriculum
because
did you use?
we had one that was created. It's called Choices. It
Okay.
doesn't exist anymore, but
Right.
it's a beautiful, simple program.
Uh,
And kids responded. And when you share your stories of people that you rescue, their situations, what horrible things are done to them, I got funding from the state of California because I told them a story about a girl who I met in juvenile facility
yeah.
that was hearing the program, hearing the the fact that she had a choice.
Wow.
And she looked at me and she said, "Why hasn't anybody ever told me this?" She had abortions already. She had sexually transmitted, whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it, disease, infection,
Yeah.
and trauma, trauma, trauma. And when I use that example to the state people, the one lady started to cry because they realize that they're missing it.
Yes.
And the same is true today. It's just worse.
You right.
It's just so worse. They're
Well,
grooming kids, and all that.
well,
So
well. Let's
anyway,
let's talk about that for a second, since you really are a subject matter expert, personally, then professionally, in understanding kids. Here you are, a product of you lived in the area of the sexual revolution, and
yes.
and we saw the fruit of that. Where
Mhm.
do you think we are now with because the sexual revolution, there wasn't trans issues going on, there wasn't changing of identities, there wasn't it right, it was just free love, this false love and promises. But now, what would you say? Give us your take on it now.
Well, there are groups that are in the front lines trying to address these issues, but it's hard because, like, even in Anchorage, we have a very liberal school board,
Right.
and but it's I think it's the whole slow boil
Yeah.
thing. I mean, the 60s broke things open, and
Yes.
well, Kinsey, all of
Oh
that,
gosh.
who
Yeah.
Alpha, all of his rotten data. And it's just kind of, you have the tree of life and then you have the tree of death.
It's that simple.
It really is. And the kids today are being, I really think parents have a hard time because they're told, their lies about it.
Right.
I'm part of a coalition that it's hard in Alaska because it's like I'm the only one up here.
Yeah.
But it's a Protect Child Health Coalition that is a bunch of Christian folks all over the nation working in various parts of the nation to address curriculum issues, transgender. Miriam Grossman, who you may know, is a psychiatrist and she
Right.
is an expert. She's part of this coalition. So I'm kind of peripheral, but you have to wake up and try what you can. Just like you're going all over the world to rescue kids. And I think what Christians have done is they haven't really woken up to how bad it is. I mean,
Right.
you've got to take action. And, like you do, you have after you're done here, you're going to go rescue somebody somewhere. And, you have to just be available. And understand this is a spiritual battle for our kids.
Yes. And faith without works is dead. I think the church's DNA has been really off for decades. We allowed the culture to conform the church instead of the church to, I just heard someone that I really respect, Alistair Begg. I've always listened to him and loved him and met him. But he did give advice to a grandmother regarding her grandson marrying a trans, and should she go to the wedding. And now, look, this isn't a make or break it issue for certain. The gospel is, but I didn't agree with his counsel that she should go, or get a gift or whatever. That's the one place my wife and I have drawn the line to say, no, we won't go to a gay marriage because it's an oxymoron. And somebody who I really appreciate, conservative aunt, and he's very gay and very funny, and he has a strong social media platform. But he was on my program like you, and he said, Victor, I and my partner have chosen not to get married. I was like, really? Why? Because it's legal. He said, marriage is a sacred institution for Christians that God, started. He goes, we have no right to impose on that tradition from us. Now, of course, we want civil rights and all that. And I was so taken back by his sincerity. And he said, Victor, people in our community that are what I'd say intellectually honest, no, even though we don't agree with you on many things, some things, there's so many we can. And he goes, I just want you to know I love you, man. And I said, I love you too, Anthony. Not gay. And then he just starts laughing. He's just cracking up. He goes, yeah, hard no, Victor is not gay. But I really appreciate folks like you who come from the background and then, you get saved and you start following the Lord saying, well, God, what do you want me to do? How can I help? And it is in reaching the children. There's no doubt in my mind. Because, folks, if you're watching this right now, you got to have grace on children who are being indoctrinated in far greater ways. I think about the porn issue. I used to have to go out in the woods as a kid underneath the log, and it was the community Playboy or whatever for kids to see boobies and all that. And now that a kid my age back then could flip open or turn on a phone and see the most horrific sexual perversion, not even just man and woman, anything. So therefore, we have to, I believe, have grace on children, but toe the line and be willing to definitely engage this culture and youth with just what Priscilla was sharing and how she used to do regarding abstinence. My wife and I took a course to be abstinence teachers, and it was called, WAIT, Y-WAIT, or the WAIT program, the W-A-I-T. And it was so beneficial, and we saw how kids responded, even high school kids. They're like, wow, I never knew that was really an option. So another thing, like our guest had said, you need to get involved. The battleground is in these school boards. And without people who set policy, make law, Christians need to engage in that area, full throttle, for them to make a difference. And you certainly don't have to go overseas to do what I do, but we actually have a task force here in the U.S., and where we hunt pedophiles and help break this sexual abuse for child exploitation through the internet. It's beyond what people think. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, please seek to allow God to use you in your community and in your family. And I want to thank my guest, Priscilla. And we had technical issues here at the end because of, I think, her location up in Alaska. But I do look forward to having a second round with this and even bringing my bride in. But you guys, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, do it for the glory of God, and pray for Priscilla. And we just bless you and thank God for you as an abortion survivor, a failed abortion survivor, and then one who had abortions and worked at a clinic, and then you get saved. It's an incredible redemption story. I'd say this: Focus on the Family does have very good resources, and I would say go to their website and check it out. And if you have any more questions, contact us via our website, victormarx.com. We appreciate you guys, and God bless you.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. We'd love to stay connected with you and invite you to the conversation beyond this podcast. You can check out more of the work we're doing around the world at victormarx.com, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all linked in the show notes. Be sure to drop us a comment in the review section if today's show has impacted you in any way, or if there's anything you'd like to hear more of. We're always encouraged to hear from you. Thanks for spending your time with us. Until next time.